Bethan Jayne. She is a West Midlands-based multimedia artist, and as an artist, she does not like to limit herself to one material or subject matter due to the fact that she gets bored quite easily, and likes to take herself on various journeys. She takes together ideas of gender and self as her basis for many of her works, and her projects have spanned through politics, ancestry, communities, and childhood. They have all aided in exploring herself and her relationship to the world. Even though she sometimes tackles difficult themes, she always wants her work to have elements of fun and playfulness. This often comes with her love of comedy, particularly the surreal and the absurd. She is not afraid to present herself in a humorous way, and whether it be dressing up as a 19th century man or taking the guise of a fictional character, she often also needs to feel the need to collaborate with others. Gender has also played an important part in Bethan's work, with her recent writing exploring the view of women through art and a critical reading of Aristotle and Freud.
Thank you, Carmela, and I promise there are no flashing images or nudity in this presentation, just so you all know. Right, let's make a start, shall we? Can we all see that? Is that okay for everyone? Yeah, okay. So hi, I'm artist Bethan Jayne, and I'm going to take you through some of my work today. I never actually really saw myself as an artist. Anyone who knows me well or have known me for a long time would actually know that I was going to be doing primary education for a long time, and I was definitely not an artist. Then I found like this drawing of myself I did, and I'm assuming that this is me and my mum and my sister. I apologise to my mum and my sister, to be honest, because some of the drawings I did of them are pretty horrendous. But that's me there in the right corner holding what looks like an artist palette. So maybe I did actually see myself as an artist and just didn't realise. But my main love that comes before art is actually comedy. And here's me with my favourite comedians of all time, Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer. I would have loved to be a comedian, then I realised I probably wasn't funny enough for that. That's kind of what led me to art. Vic Reeves is actually one of my favourite artists of all time. He also goes by the name of Jim Moyer. And this is actually one of my very favourite pieces, which I saw not long before the very first lockdown, which is quite scary to think about. I dragged my cousins and my sisters down to London to see this at the show Romantic, and it's still definitely one of my most favourite pieces. And Moya has been such a massive inspiration to me throughout the years. I began my career, well, I say career, I don't know if I'm even in my career yet particularly, as primarily a painter. These are some of my most recent paintings. I wouldn't want to subject you to some of the ones I did years ago. The one on the left was actually shown in Grace and Perry's art club on Channel 4 during the first lockdown, which was something that was very exciting for me to have shown. And the one on the right is just a painting I did for a family member. But painting, especially acrylic painting, was something I really loved a lot. So I've kind of split this presentation into my three main projects that I've done over the last couple of years, the ones that have pieces of work that have really stuck out to me. So this is from the end of 2019, start of 2020, and this body of work stemmed from me looking into my ancestry. I was looking at, it's so vast when you look at things like ancestry, there's so many people to look at. And I was searching through and I found this member of my family, Josiah, who, this is his criminal record here, was found forging coins with his cousin and then was put on a prison boat to be sent to Australia. And I was so fascinated by the story that I only had fragments and pieces of that I wanted to form my own narrative around them. So I started this body of work where I wanted to become Josiah himself. And these were some of the mock-ups I created at first for this project. Me as every single member of Josiah's family, because surely there's got to be some kind of family resemblance there. It was also first time really using Photoshop, as you can probably tell from some of these, and they do still quite make me laugh looking back. And so I then really wanted to just become Josiah himself. I was at this time really discovering my love of drag, and if anyone who knows me knows that I do go to a lot of drag shows, and so to be dressing up as a man was something I found really exciting and fun. And so these are some of the shots that I took of this process of becoming Josiah, and these are some of the outcomes of that. I think this is some of my favourite work I've ever made, becoming Josiah. I look back on it so fondly, and it's something I definitely like to return to. And if you go through all my work, there's always a sense of becoming someone else, not entirely knowing I'm doing that. I sometimes just do it without become a pattern that you can see. And I took this and made it into a live performance throughout the Birmingham School of Art. So here I am following my tutor, John Wigley, around the building. A lot of people pointed at John Wigley that he should become some kind of inspiration, that I should model Josiah Wilkes' characteristics off of him. So I followed him around the building. And again, it was a performance I really enjoyed, and I handed out so these images on the right, I made them into small little cards and I handed them out to people, which was quite a common practice if you were rich during the time that Josiah was alive. And then as I delved deeper into Josiah's past, I found that I could actually go and visit his grave at a churchyard in Darlaston, which I think was really strange because I'd been forming this character in my own practice, and then suddenly it made him and his family a lot more real. The fact that I could actually go and see his tombstone, and this churchyard was quite bizarre. There was just a church and then a single row of gravestones and nothing else there. It was not like any other churchyard I'd ever been to, and so a lot of the people buried there were related to each other, and it was quite an unusual feeling that I am related to these people. And so I also performed here as well. This was a costume I'd made, a prison outfit, very similar to the one that Josiah would have worn. The only difference here is that I had to paint on the beard. As much as I loved that beard that I'd made out of like woolen hair, it made me so ill. I had an allergic reaction to the hair or the latex I used to get onto my face, and the medicine they'd given me actually meant that I couldn't walk. It was a very bad time, so I think I'm going to stay away from wearing fake beards now. And yeah, so I really do look back on this project in fondness. And although you do see throughout my work me often performing as characters, all my bodies of work are very different. I think Carmela said at the start that I get bored really easily, and I do. I don't like to keep the same themes throughout every single project. And this brings me on to my next project, Territory. So Territory came directly after the Josiah Wilkes project, and it was basically something that I did in conjunction with the Fierce Festival. So the Fierce Festival, for those who don't know, is this amazing Birmingham live art festival. Happens once a year. It's not happened the last year or so because of COVID, but if you ever get a chance to go, it's amazing. On the left here, we have Ginny Lemon, who, if anyone has watched Drag Race recently, may recognise Ginny. Ginny's an amazing performer, and they opened up the 2019 show. And if you ever get a chance to see them live, definitely do. On the right, we have Keejan Thomas, who I was told to call Kiwi. I helped them to set up their performance at the Fierce Festival, which I highly recommend finding this on YouTube. or watch it live if you can, because honestly it's such an amazing performance about Black trans people, and it's really hard hitting, so I 100% recommend everyone go and watch that. So I was looking into their Fears Festival archives. These archives are from the complete span of the Fears Festival, documenting every single year that it's been on for, and I wasn't really drawn to any particular materials in the archive, more the idea of community that was created. And so I decided to think more about these ideas of community and how we can translate them and how we can protect these communities as well. And I started especially through acrylic paintings on paper and board, kind of making all these different figures and bringing them together. And then these translated into papier-mâché masks. This is when my love of papier-mâché really started, and it's something I've continuously carried on. I love the materiality of it and the childishness of it, and it's like quite quick and easy, and it's a material that I'm really drawn to. And the mask on the left is also going to be shown at the Icon Gallery next month at the Icon for Artists show. So it's free, so if you're around, I definitely check it out. I know that all of the Round Lemon co-founders have work in the show as well, so it's be really exciting to see. And then we hit into the pandemic, and we were kind of a bit stuck on what we could do. We were suddenly trapped at home and we couldn't share our work in the way we wanted. And so I decided to show my work in a way that I thought would be fun, and that was to put it in my cupboard at home and create this cupboard gallery. And quite literally, I got my cupboard and emptied it out and put my work up there, and I marketed it as if it was an actual gallery space. So for example, we had the list of works, and I did a list of events, and there was a publication that went along with it, basically just showing the work in a way that I would want it to be shown. And I got a really great response to this, and it's something I'd love to do again, because I think in a time like this, it's really important to get your work seen by people. And also, it was interesting to navigate such a small space. So it's like a big walk-in cupboard, as opposed to just like a small little cupboard. So you could enter the space and you'd be drawn into the part of the community, if that makes sense. So I wanted this idea that if you were physically there, you would be joining the community. And the way I showed it through live videos and photography, and it allowed other people also to join that community in a digital space. And if you look on my website, it has all the documents on there still, and I wanted to make it as interactive as possible. So I did like an Instagram filter you could use, and there was also colouring in sheets, and basically just different ways to make it as active as possible in such a way that everyone could access it, because that's something that is really interesting to me, is making work accessible to everyone, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And so this brings us on to my most current project, which I'm actually doing with, I started off with my cousin Nell. I think Nell is somewhere in this call, so if she is, hi Nell. Nell is my cousin, and she, oh, there she is, she just popped up, hello. So Nell, for those who don't know, Nell is my cousin, and she is one of the best people in the entire world. Honestly, I could sit and talk about Nell all day, but I won't, because it would be here too long. And so Nell and I have a really great relationship, and I do talk to her quite often, and we FaceTime quite a lot. And so I was visiting her one day, and she started doing some drawings, and this is what she created. So it's self-portrait in her school uniform with a flower and a Viking dragon. And I just instantly loved it and thought it would be so cool to start doing a project with her as a basis to create a body of research. So this is where we started, and I then created a series of workshops to do with her. So the workshops we were doing were exploring our sense of self and our own identities, and this was one of the outcomes of our first workshop. So I took this activity from Linda Stupart's publication, which is like learning with children basically. And I gave her a pile of clay and just said, make me a body and just anything you like. And it was so interesting to see how her ideas came about. So it started off, I think, as a heart and some lungs, and then suddenly that she made a nostril, and then there was a lamppost and a man who was doing splits on his own eyeball. And it was so funny to have those conversations with her and to see how she was thinking as she made, and that be kind of that research process becoming the basis of my body of work. So these are my outcomes to our work together. So the first one is taken from this portrait that she did of herself. So I made it out of papier mâché, what I imagine it would look like if it was three-dimensional in a physical space. And there's something kind of strange about it, especially with the long eyelashes and the kind of straggled hair and the kind of unfinishedness to it, but I think it really is quite well paralleled to the original drawing, and I do really love this piece. And then the one on the right is a fire engine. So we were talking about this idea of gender neutrality, which she just took on board so well, and we were thinking, well, what do we call a female person who puts out fires? That's a firewoman. What do we call a male person who puts out fires? A fireman. And what about someone who maybe doesn't want to use, if we don't know if it's male or female, or they don't use male or female pronouns specifically, maybe they use they, them, they're a fire engine. And I love that idea that anything can be anything, and there's kind of no boundaries to it, which I really loved. And that's what this piece came out of, this idea of a fire engine that's kind of partly human as well, with the long arms and legs. And I really enjoy working with Nell. And then I started to look at different artists as well. So I wanted to use this idea of how Nell and other children think, and how I can use that to bring about my own artwork and think about my own childhood. So I began looking at the work of Brian Dawn Chalkley, who I got to have a little chat with the other week, and is a really fascinating artist to talk to. And he stitches into pillowcases and draws on them with felt tip, kind of creating these childlike drawings and scenes. He uses pillowcases because of the ideas of like dreams that come from them, and they're kind of a bit bizarre and you don't really know what's going on. That's why I like it. I like having the mystery in my work. That's something that is really important to me. I like everyone to take their own meaning and kind of think what they want. I think it's silly to make people think a certain way about your work. I think you should let them take complete free reign from it, because that's the importance of artwork, is that you have your own feelings about it. And so I began to create my own stitching as well, my own embroidery. So I took my own, after looking at Nell's drawings, I took my own childhood drawings and I stitched them onto individual pieces of felt, and then they came together like a blanket, a bit like a childhood blanket you'd have. This idea of security, and it's also a transitional object that takes you away from your mother. You use it to kind of become more independent, and it was really evoking to me ideas of my own childhood, and it became a really interesting starting point for me for my own practice. I also really love the work of Andy Holden. So this pyramid piece was inspired inspired by when he was a child, he went to the pyramids and he took a piece of the pyramids home with him, thinking that would be more exciting than buying a souvenir from a gift shop. And then he carried this kind of guilt with him for years. He felt so completely guilty about taking this rock that he then returned to the pyramids many years later and filmed himself returning it to the exact same point he took it from. And what I was most interested in this work is that this is kind of like a child's perspective of this rock. You know, it's like as a child how guilty he felt for taking this rock becomes so massive. It's how as a child we think so differently about things and that things have a different scope as they do now. So this kind of idea of childhood I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. I didn't always have the easiest childhood. I never go into details about what happened in my childhood, particularly because one, it's not just my story to tell, and also I think you have to be careful what you do share. I don't want to just sit here and tell you my whole life story. So I kind of just refer to it as the transitional period in my life where a lot of things changed, and I'm trying to explore my childhood through a lens that it wasn't entirely that bad, that without these events occurring, I wouldn't be sat here right now, I wouldn't be the person I am now. That's how I like to think about it, is that yes, at the time they seem really bad, and looking back, yes, there's still negative things that happened, but they haven't had an entirely negative impact on me. I have to look at it through kind of rose-tinted lenses. So this is actually kind of the personification of my childhood in a way. This kind of nameless character is my childhood. The actual headpiece was first inspired by the man with the stick from Big Grease Big Night Out, like the shape of it and the eye holes and the way that all the drawings on it. So if you've not seen the original program, the man with the stick used to wear a kind of paper headpiece with all these different drawings on them, and they tell like little stories on them. You have to, it's kind of hard to explain. You'd have to look at it as well. But I wanted to bring this into my headpiece, is that each drawing on there does tell like a little story. There's no annotations on there to tell you exactly what happened. You take your own reading of it. And so this character just sits and looms there. That's how I view my childhood. It kind of just looms over me. There are times, you know, as I've got older, I do think about it a lot more and how much it has impacted me. So that's kind of why this character just sits quietly. And in this video piece, the character will just sit and stare. And there's kind of this balance between, is this a human presence or is this kind of a statue just staring? It's this kind of position them together. And so this is part of my captive series. So all 3 videos play together at the same time. This idea of the looming childhood and being trapped in your childhood without exactly knowing. So for example, like you can really see a human presence in the top left, the clock ticking. The clock has become quite a big object in my work without me even realizing. So if you can see it in the top right corner over here, it became something that was quite funny for people to see, because when the hour gets the hour, a sheep comes out of it, and so it kind of became something I was known for on different Teams calls and Facebook calls. You'd always see it in the corner, and so I guess it's become part of my identity, and that's why I've included it. And these videos would play, in the ideal world, they play together on 3 monitors that you could view them at the same time. And this kind of brings us to what I'm currently working on. So I've been really wanting to depict my childhood in a way that's not completely obvious about what's happening, but wanting to explore it and kind of come to peace with it. So these are my 3 characters. They're based on myself, my mom, and my sister when we were younger. I promise you, none of us actually did look like that at all. I just like the way of things being exaggerated, and I actually copied a kid's craft on how to make paper mache heads. Well, these are mod rock, but I followed a very similar pattern, and apparently these are going to look really amazing and lifelike. And that's what drew me to them so much, is how bizarre they actually are. And I gave them names of Betsy, Apple, and Star. These come from either different childhood nicknames or different stories. This idea of they are us, but also creating a bit of a disconnect as well to remove us from the story slightly. And here they are with their full bodies as well. I really love these characters because they kind of just sit and look at you. There's like life to them, but they're also very still, and the way they sit, and they have kind of movement to their bodies. When you kind of place them, they never really sit the same every time you move them. And I've been filming them onto a camcorder. So this camcorder has been in our family for years, and some of my very first kind of memories are filmed on this camcorder. So this is kind of how I've been filming them. It's kind of this idea of creating a family kind of video, these childhood videos, but also kind of when nothing particularly happens. Again, it's this protecting of people and keeping the mystery, and the thing that you expect something to happen, but then nothing happens at all. I was reading a play, Waiting for Godot, I think it's pronounced, and literally in this play, nothing happens at all. You wait the whole play for Godot to turn up, and he never does. And I like this idea that you watch these videos and you're waiting for something to happen, and then nothing happens, because I think it's me trying to not necessarily remove these events, but I'm trying to think of all the good things as well and not just focus on the negativity. So I want to say some quick thank yous quickly, because there are some people here that I want to shout out thank you to, because I have the most supportive and amazing families and friends ever, and I don't say thank you to them enough. I want to shout out particularly to my mom, because she is one of the best people in the world, and she's been so supportive of me going to art school and filling up her kitchen with a ridiculous amount of art supplies and sculptures, and she's let me basically take over the house with all my stuff. So thank you to her. I would say thank you to my sister as well, but she's currently watching a football match, and I don't blame her choosing hot football boys over me, to be honest. And also to Nell, because I know Nell's there somewhere, and she was the basis to the start of this work. So a big thank you to Nell, and to also all the lovely Round Lemon people, because I think without them we wouldn't have created something as cool as Round Lemon, and we wouldn't be sat here today getting to share our work to so many amazing people. And obviously thank you to everyone else who has come to watch this, and all my other friends and family who are here. You can find me all these links on my website, on my Instagram, and I'm always over on Round Lemon. I run the social media page, so if you have a message there, you're probably talking to me. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'm gonna stop now before I bore you all too much.
Thank you so much, Bethan. That was a delight. Oh. We already have a question in the chat from Fraser, and he asked, what was the most challenging paper mache you've ever done?
Oh, that's a hard one. You know what though, it's probably the sculpture of Nell that I showed before, because it was an upstanding kind of piece, and it just didn't want to stand up, and every time I add something to it, it would kind of buckle under its own weight. So I think I'd definitely say that one was the hardest one to do.
And in that particular piece you're talking about, I am just obsessed with the massive stark eyelashes. I think there's such a great characteristic to that particular piece. I also had a question about paper mache. I know you're interested in it now because of the connotations to like childhood and nostalgia. Did you ever do paper mache when you were younger, or is it something that you just found as a material to relate to your kind of themes and ideas?
I don't really remember doing paper mache that often. I remember making a paper mache rabbit money box at school for some reason that we made and gave to our teacher. And I remember making a mod rock vase at school, but I don't particularly remember that. I don't think I was really that much of an artistic child. I did lots of drawings for my mom that I'm sure she's still got millions of somewhere. But no, I don't think particularly.
That's funny. Gemma Moore has asked in the chat bar, have you looked at Paula Rago's artwork?
Hi, I feel like I have, but I might need to remind myself and go back and have another look. So I definitely add that to my list of artists research.
That's the thing I love about these little talks and the chats, the fact that you could share artists with each other. It's a great tool. Round Lemon, aka Ryan, has a question.
Yeah, I sort of know your work quite well, but I just wanted to ask if you have any ideas for your little cupboard gallery post sort of coronavirus, because I know it really spanned from the sort of situation that we've been in the past year, but do you have any ideas for anything for the future?
Well, I really did actually want to do it again, but with like taking in external artworks from people, and I did apply for funding, which I didn't get for that, but then other bigger and better things came from that instead. I don't know. I think with the creation of Round Lemon and kind of this idea of being able to have a community of artists to make physical exhibitions and digital exhibitions, I'm not sure if it will, but that might be something to explore. Maybe, I don't know if I want loads of people around the house coming to look in the cupboard, to be honest.
Yeah, it would be so lovely if we had a little cupboard event. Hopefully one day in the future we will be able to. Andrea has a question.
Yep. So that was great to see all of your work together. I've never seen it like that. And it's the first time when I say like it's about family, like most of your work, it's about family. And I was wondering if you could talk more about the process of making costumes, because I find it really interesting how you moved from making costumes and using yourself as the character to creating the character.
Well, so some of my costumes I've made, some I haven't. I'm not a natural born seamstress. I tried to make a skirt once and it fell apart instantly. So most of the time I either kind of buy pre-made things that I can work on top of. So for example, in the Josiah Wilkes project, it was a kind of prison outfit that I then painted upon, and then I put it into salt water to get that texture of like being near the sea, and then to make all the metal on it rusty. And so also the t-shirt I made for the costume for this project, I just literally bought a t-shirt and sewed into it. I prefer doing it that way, I think, because I like the idea of taking a garment and changing it rather than making it from scratch. I don't think I'd have the patience to make it from scratch either. And sometimes the costume just comes to me. So like in the Territory project, when I had a costume for that, it was just an outfit that I already had. I think it kind of depends on what the body of work is and what I feel like I need for it. And yeah, I think it just kind of depends really.
We've had a lovely comment in the chat bar from Abby saying, I would like to say how proud I am of you and the rest of Round Lemon. Amazing bunch of people. What are you doing? What are you planning on doing next? Something smaller, smiley face. Thank you, Abby. That's such a lovely comment.
So for those who don't know, Abby's my mom. I thought I'd clarify that. So coming next, I'm making the film on my camcorder. I've been doing some kind of test shots, and I think I really prefer the long kind of still shots of the work rather than lots of little moving shots. So I'm definitely going to do that. I've been doing a bit more embroidery. I've been trying to make like swimming badges. I don't know why, I just felt the need to try and make my own swimming badges. I'm then going to kind of sew onto a big towel, and that becomes a backdrop for a projection. And also just kind of sensing how I can make all these current works fit together in exhibition like kind of context. That's what I'm exploring the most at the moment.
I love the idea of the swimming badges on a towel. It would be interesting to see how that is displayed once you get going on it, if it was something that you could interact with or if it was something that was just on display. Ryan has another question.
Right. I just wanted to ask about, you mentioned about the rose tinted lens or the rose tinted glasses, and automatically I think about the Rocky Horror Show and the song that they mentioned, and I just wondered if you could elaborate on the connection between that and drag and this sort of advanced self or advanced or progressive sort of identity and your child drawings.
Yeah, that's a big question. I guess, okay, I've been interested in drag for quite a long time, and quite a few years now I've loved drag, and it kind of sits alongside my practice. I see any drag that I've done or any time that I've become someone else, it just kind of sits alongside my practice, and they do work together. In terms of my childhood, I guess there's always been this idea of being someone else in my childhood. So I went through a phase where I would only wear boys. I know obviously it's hard to say gendered clothes now, but I would only wear boys' clothes, and I would not wear anything else but boys' clothes, and would cry if I had to wear anything else. And I always was always in like doing theatre, and I think this idea of just being someone else in general, not necessarily drag, but just being someone else, whether it was because I just enjoyed it and I love the performative aspect, or whether it was because of what was going on, it was taking myself out of that, I don't know. I guess this is something I'm still trying to explore. I'm still trying to learn a lot about myself, really. I hope that answers your question. It's very cool. I'm trying.
We have a comment in the chat bar from Holly saying, as well as now, have you thought of making work with other family members, perhaps your sister?
I don't think my sister would want to make work with me, to be honest. I think she's like 17 now. I don't imagine it's cool for her to make artwork with a big sister. A lot of my early works, actually, so if we're going back to like high school, kind of GCSE A level, a lot of my works were based on my sister, and I made a whole body of work where I created my sister into all these different characters, and I made an animation. So I guess in a sense, I made work about her, but I don't think she'd want to make work with me necessarily, as much as I try to.
Ryan, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. One last question, sorry. I really wanted to know about your experience in finding your ancestor and how, not so much the process, but how that affected you emotionally, and then how that emotions affected your work. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I began to look for my ancestor, like through my ancestry, because my nan, who she might be on this chat somewhere actually, wanted to find some of her relatives. So I said, oh, I'll have a look. I'll go on Ancestry and I'll just go through it all. Yeah, there she is. So I went through for her, and I tried to find these relatives, and with kind of some success, and then it kind of draws you in. If you've ever done it before, it's quite easy to get addicted because you add one person in. So it says, look, there's 3 more people who might be related to you, and suddenly you're like 10 generations back of people. And I don't know if it affected me emotionally particularly. I found it quite weird to go through because it's this complicated notion that they're real people, but you'll never get to meet them. I think that's what I found quite strange about it, is that I've spent so much time looking through them, particularly Josiah, because he had a lot of backstory and there's like websites about him and things. And it's this notion of that he was a real person, but I'll never get to meet him and I'll never get to talk to him, even though I've made all this work about him. And seeing his grave really kind of hit home about that point. I don't know if it ever really affects me emotionally. I just found it a bit weird to do, that there's all these people and that they're all related to me and that they go so far back. I think it just kind of put things in perspective more, really.
Yeah, following on from Ryan's question, when you were digging back through your family history, you must have discovered like a whole geographic map of people. But what made you choose Josiah out of all your family members?
He was, to be honest, he was the only one with any interesting story. When you go back through, we don't, the Goddards and the Copes, we don't go out very far, to be honest. It was very much, we all lived in the same area and it doesn't really go much else. And if you go on there, the majority of the documents are really just kind of birth documents and death documents and census as well. So he was the only person who actually had like these criminal records. And as soon as I saw that there was something else going on that wasn't just, I mean, when he was born and when he died, I knew it'd be something more interesting to dive into.
Yeah, bouncing back to Ryan, I think he has another question.
You're on mute. Dyson, you're on mute.
Sorry. More of a statement. I just really wanted to give my admiration for your portray, like your performance of Josiah, especially during that night school that we had at university. That was it was a very active night school, and how much you stayed in character was just wonderful. And in a way, I kind of want to know a bit more about how you turn yourself into a family member. Is that a way to escape yourself, perhaps? Or make someone new, but sort of somewhat like related to yourself?
Oh, thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I was so ill after that. It had to be worth it. I do really enjoy performing, and kind of the characterization is the bit I find the hardest. I think when you're in full costume and makeup, it's easier, but also a lot of my characters have like been mute. Like most of them don't talk or even do that much, because I don't think I want to start putting on accents and changing my voice and like that. Yeah, I do really enjoy the characterization aspect of it. Maybe it is, I mean, I do like doing things that are not me. I don't particularly like performing as myself. I wouldn't want to get up on a stage and start singing for everyone. I'd much rather perform as someone else, which I think is why drag is so interesting to me, because then you're yourself, but also not yourself in a way. So I think that kind of becoming someone else makes it easier for me to do a performance and be in front of people.
Yeah. Fraser has a raised hand. Would you like to ask a question, Fraser? We can't hear you if you're talking. Still can't hear. Fraser, if you'd like to pop your question in the chat bar maybe, and then I'll pass on to Andrea for now.
Right, that'll be my last question. I know you mentioned you started making art because you wanted to be a comedian, but you didn't think you're funny, but you're really funny. And I'm not saying give up or not. I think you're really funny. And talking about humor, why do your sculptures have no legs? It's really, really funny.
I'm gonna leave this call with the biggest ego ever after this. I don't know why they have no legs, to be honest. I just didn't make legs for them. Half the time, sometimes I just do things because I can't bother to do them. I don't think I could bother to make any legs for them. And I love bringing humour into my work. I like making people laugh. I think if that's all I can do, I'd like to make people laugh. You know, at the end of the day, it's just have a bit of fun with everything. Art's meant to be fun, I think, and if it makes you laugh, then that's all that matters to me, really.
It's funny how Andrea mentioned that, because I love the way that they're just Betsy, Apple and Star are just slumped on the chair with no legs. I feel like that's what makes them Betsy, Apple and Star. So I think that works quite successfully. Fraser has put a question in the chat bar saying, oh, what other methods would you like to use if you had more time?
Oh, I would like to do maybe some more clay work, but I'd like to get it properly fired if I did clay work as well. But that's not something I can really access at the moment, I don't think. I'd just like to try everything. I'm open to trying everything, really, and I love learning new things. So I think I would just try every method of artwork going.
Fraser has also said, I find it really interesting how your work relates to family. We have another question from Ruth saying, who was the artist that inspired your pillowcases and blanket? Really interesting works you created. Smiley face.
Thank you. So that's Brian Dawn Chalkley. I will drop his name in the chat. He's a friend of my tutors, and that's how I got connected to him. And he also has a really cool drag alter ego, which he sometimes brings into his work, and he collaborates with his wife in a lot of his stitching work as well. So definitely check out his work.
Fantastic. Another comment from Millie Register saying, just to say that we are all very proud of you, Bethan, and think you are fantastic. Love the registers and the chalks.
Don't want to make me cry tonight by saying how proud they are of me. But that's my cousins and my auntie and my nan and Rob. But just for clarification for everyone.
It's so lovely to see that they're all here to support you tonight. Oh, it's so lovely. So, family is a big thing of your work, Ryan says. It's lovely to see you are behind you.
I love it as well. I do have the most amazing supportive family and friends. As much as I talk about these kind of bad times in my childhood, family who are on here obviously are not included in that. I just want to say here, none of these people were included in that, and they are very supportive and amazing.
So Polly has just put in the chat, not sure when they reopen, but modern clay might be useful for you, Bethan, thinking about future clay work, and it's a community, just like Round Lemon.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I have been to modern clay before, actually, I think on a trip with the university, and I'll definitely think about visiting them once we can go outside a bit more.
Definitely. Has anybody got any last questions before we wrap this up for tonight? Nope. Right. Thank you everybody so much for coming tonight. Thank you so much to Bethan for just being amazing, and sharing all her practice with us. If you would like to go to any more artist talks, events, open mic nights, I've just dropped a link in the chat bar where you can book your tickets. I think Andrea is having an artist talk next Thursday, and the next open mic night will be on May the 12th, if I remember correctly from the PowerPoint. So thank you, everybody.
Oh, one last thing. I missed a question from Fraser, who said, who's that guy in the COVID? It's Noel Edmonds. So we all know Noel Edmonds is COVID. Thank you.
My bad, I missed the question. Holly says, thank you, Bethan. It's been great to learn more about your practice, and thank you, Round Lemon, for hosting. You were all brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you,
everyone.
Wonderful, Bethan.